Hello, welcome. I'm Ranger Barbara. I'm broadcasting live at Katmai National Park in Alaska. We are here on live cams which are brought to you by explore.org. We are eternally grateful for providing the opportunity to bring Katmai into your living rooms. We are going to do something a little different today. Normally a live chat is a structured kind of serious program, and we decided, we figure that, at least it's my opinion, that anyone who's viewing on the cams is a virtual visitor to this park. And so we wanted today to invite you into the auditorium that we have in Katmai to see an evening program. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do my normal evening program for you. It'll be a little different since you're not here, though I do have some lovely Bear Cam viewers here in my audience who've come out to see me, which is really fun. So I do have a live audience today, as well as you. And then afterwards, you can submit questions and we'll try and answer those if we have time. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started.
Facebook was on a little bit of a delay. If you can reintroduce.
Oh, I need to reintroduce myself. I am Ranger Barbara. I'm happy to be here. I should just actually point out that I am also Bear Cam Addict on the Bear Cam. So if you have talked with Bear Cam Addict on the chat before, that is me, and I am here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of launch into my evening program. What I normally do in my evening program is I start 15 minutes early before 8 o'clock, and I just show super fun bear videos, which I've done just screen capture, just like we all do on the cams. We take videos and we share them, and so I have a bunch on my computer that I have, and so I normally do 15 minutes of fun bear videos, including grazers, cubs go over the falls, and things like that. But I'm going to share with you just a few of them so you'll get an idea, and then I'm going to launch into my program. So I'm going to make this technology work. Andrew says I did a good job. Awesome. Okay, so welcome to The Young and the Restless. I call this a Bears of Brooks Falls soap opera. We're going to start with some previews. I call it the previews. It's like going to the movies. We watch previews here. So the first one is I normally play is Bead Nose Gives Her Cubs a Ride. Let's see if it starts. Oh, the miracle of modern technology. It actually is starting. So normally what's really fun about this is often people have seen Bead Nose up fishing the lip, and I am able to say to them, this is her with her cubs a couple years ago. Also, we've seen these two rascals running around as emancipated subadults this year. So we can, it's fun when people have seen these bears during the day to come in and say, look at these two little cubs. They're riding on their mom's back, and this is what they were like a couple years ago, and now they're being naughty subadults, just like adolescents. All right, this is a video I took from the underwater cam. Very surprising one day this happened, and I got a big kick out of it. Here come the mergansers. You may have seen these little birds on the cams fishing around from the top. They look like they're kind of flying on the water. Well, this is what they look like from underneath, and it's always fun. It's always fun when I do my evening program and we have kids in the audience because they just laugh. It's really fun. Next, this is a good one also because this bear, I believe, is 402 on the lip, which features in our story. This is a fun video for people to watch. I remember the day this happened. We've had Chunk in the jacuzzi lately, so it's kind of fun to see this video. I like to play this twice because it's really short, and I personally, it's my opinion about this video, that this is an offensive move on her part. I believe she actually takes this fish and slaps him in the face with it. So let's watch it again. So she falls off the lip. She's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm in the jacuzzi with Chunk. I think I'll slap him in the face with the fish. Anyway, super fun. And then who could forget this video? We've had Lefty. I like to talk about this video because we've seen Lefty on the lip. Lefty is the master of the lip now. He can catch about a fish a minute, it seems like. So I do tell the story about when Lefty came for the first time in July. He was used to fishing in the fall, where you just snorkel around and pick up fish. When he got here in July, he didn't know what to do. So this one is a fun video. So it's always fun to point out there is a learning curve on the lip. Lefty's definitely mastered that one. Then we take a look at this little kind of serious video for a minute. It's pretty chaotic. We got a bunch of bears, being bears out on the spit. After watching all of these super fun videos, it's a little serious, but I like to play this one for a change. And normally 15 minutes has passed. At that point, it's 8 p.m. and everybody has come into the auditorium. And I welcome them. I'm sure you all know by now it's the centennial here. We're really excited to have people here. And we were founded in 1918 to protect the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. And I have this beautiful picture of the day I went out to do training in the Valley. We also normally pitch our programs. People who aren't here might not know that we do have 5,000 years of human history here. So we have a culture walk, which we talk about that. And then every night's evening program is different, and I normally tell them what that's about. And then we launch into my program, The Young and the Reckless. It's a story of Bear 503, and his life is full of enough drama to fill any daytime soap opera. So what's funny about talking to you people live on the cams is that I normally tell them that my hope is that they will, after they leave here, get on the cams and follow a bear they've seen here today. But you guys are already on the cams. So every soap opera starts with the mothers. We have two mothers who figure in this drama. We have bear number 402 and bear 4035 Holly. Both of these bears are about 20 years old. 402 is at her 7th lone litter of cubs. She's been wandering around here lately with 4 cubs. Teaser is you get to see pictures of those 4 cubs later in this program. But for now, when we start this story in 2014, she was raising a yearling cub. She is a great lip fisher, and she also has lost a cub to infanticide, as has 435 Holly. The Holly lost a cub to infanticide, and that video of that is actually in our park film, which I think is interesting, just trying to show that this park has good things and bad things in nature. And 435 Holly is a fan favorite. She gets very fat. She likes to wander around camp. Most people who have come to my program earlier in the year have seen Holly. She's kind of a superstar, and her 2 cubs. And in the beginning of this, she has raising a spring cub. And here they are, the children in our soap opera. 503 was a yearling cub at the time. There he is. Actually, this picture is cut out of her. He's standing next to her, fishing on the lip. And 719 is a little spring cub. To me, she looks like a little furry piglet in this picture. The yearlings seem to always look a little bit like hyenas, and the spring cubs are little tiny things. Spring cubs are cubs that have been born in hibernation. And this is their first summer in in life. Yearlings are, after the first summer, they hibernate with their mom, they come back and they're yearlings. Normally, after the next year, they hibernate with their mom and their mom emancipates them. That's kind of the normal scheme of things in the cub world, but sometimes they keep them one extra year. Then we have, what soap opera is a soap opera without the father? That maybe is the father. We don't know if he's the father, but everybody thinks he's the father. You got to check those ears out. Are those the same ears as 503? I don't know. I mean, it's speculation. This is bear 856. He's probably the most dominant bear at the falls. He has a complicated relationship with 402. They court, they mate, but he has also killed one of her cubs. So he figures in our story. When the story starts in 2014, he was courting 402 while she had her yearling cub, and which means he was following her around. As a bear that has committed infanticide, actually this bear, 856, killed a cub off the Riffles platform where I'm standing today, right to the right of where I am earlier this year. That is a normal part of brown bear life. I was just reading that it's not just males that commit infanticide. In a study, they saw 13 males killed cubs and 7 females. So it is something that happens in the bear world, and something that 402 has experience with and would be concerned about. All right, we have other players, and those players are you. Normally when I'm here, I'm telling people about the Bear Cam. I ask many people have never even heard of the Bear Cam before they come here. So I talk to them about the Bear Cam and play-by-plays and chats and things like that. And pitch and tell them that we had 40 million plus contacts last year. It's a very big deal, and we hope that they will join. But here you are. Awesome. So this is where we start our story. We have 402, who was the mother of 503, and 435, the mother of 719. So as our story begins, it's 2014. We have 503 is actually a little cub. This video was put together by Explore. I believe Ranger Roy had a lot to do with it. And what you're going to see in this video is a little piece that they did about when the cub was separated from its mom. You're going to see chat bubbles, which you're going to recognize because you're typing them in right now. And so let's take a look at what happened. All right, I never can watch that because if I watch it, I cry every time. So if that was the end of the story, we could be done. And we could be watching the cams and I would answer your questions. But that's just the beginning of the story. Actually, if you look at the end of that video, you will see 503 trying to nurse and she walks away from him. So what happened next was she emancipated him early is what we are saying now. We used to kind of say she abandoned him. I did want to say also point out that all of these photos in the and then what happened pictures were taken here in Katmai National Park by me. So we have more than just bears in this park. It's an awesome park to be at. So Act 1, Cub loses mom. So 402 ends up being pursued, as we talked, by 856. We're now talking about this, I believe, Ranger Mike, who's standing, he's not Ranger Mike anymore, he's Mike Fitz, Explorer Fellow, standing right next to me. Did a little piece lately about, I believe we call it male-instigated emancipation.
Did you have a question?
Oh, no. Sorry. I shouldn't talk to Mike while I'm on the video, though I know all of you would like to be talking to Mike right now. But anyway, the idea being that the male courts the female, and the female, instead of like pushing the cub away, is paying attention to the male. And so the cub basically gets to the point where they figure out that if they want some food, they're going to have to go get it themselves. Well, this is what happened to Bear, which we now call Bear 503. He ended up on his own at 1.5 years. So what we're going to do is see what happened next. It's kind of funny for me to be playing these videos of Mike when he's standing next to me, but we'll see how he feels about that. All right. All right, so yes, this bear ended up on its own, did the best it can for itself up in the tree. There was a concern that we never would see this bear again. It has been August here. Last month was August. A lot of the bears left. You probably have noticed that the sows and cubs have not returned yet. And so it was possible that this bear would just disappear and we would never see it again. But then what happened? What happened was, I'm going to tell the story from Ranger Gene's perspective. Apparently, Ranger Gene and Ranger Roy were in King Salmon and they were kind of monitoring the bear cam. They were looking at the chat, and there was a bear cam viewer here whose on-screen name is Calliope Jane. And she was talking about how she had some photos from Margot Creek area or something of Holly and her cubs, plural. Well, Holly at the time only had one cub, so that was a little puzzling. So Ranger Gene said, could you post some photos? And she and Roy looked at the photos and they were like, I really think that's 402's cub with Holly, and that's really strange. And Mike apparently was pretty skeptical about this because bear adoption is pretty darn rare, and he was concerned that that wasn't really the cub. So let's see what happened next. I'm hearing that the audio is not coming through. That's too bad. So Mike is talking about how rare bear adoption is in the world, and that this is the first time that we might have documented it here, that we have not seen bear adoption before here, that it's a pretty exciting thing, that maybe we're going to get to see these bears come down the lake. That's this was a live chat, and we were just waiting to see if we were actually going to see these mixed litter. So Mike is talking about how rare it is to actually see an adoption, which is true. I mean, I'm going to talk about adoption in a minute, but it was very rare. And so to actually get to see this adoption and know who the parties were also is really unusual. So here's Holly. We're seeing Holly for the first time, and she's come back from from eating, and she is very fat. And now Mike is going to take a look and see if he can find the yearling cub. Over there you can see the spring cub is back in the back there. So here comes 503. He's at 503 now. He was given a number. His nickname is actually Cub Adult because he became a subadult when he was a cub. So there they are. This is the adopted little blended family of a yearling, a spring cub, and Holly. So this was the first sighting of them after this adoption event. So the next thing that happened was, I believe Mike was still a little skeptical about this adoption, and so he said, well, I'm not going to believe it's a true adoption until we see Holly nursing 503. So lucky for us, we have cams and we have video of the event. The noise you're hearing is the little cub bawling, the spring cub asking to nurse. I always love it when she puts her arm around little spring cub. So yes, we definitely have a bear adoption here. Bear adoption is rare. It is documented in polar bears, black bears, and brown bears. Black bears readily adopt orphan cubs. So if there are orphan cubs, researchers will just put them in the den with a cub, with a bear that has cubs, and they will adopt them. Polar bears, most of the sightings they've had of polar bears who have adopted cubs have been one bear that's had a litter, lost the whole litter, and then adopted another litter from a bear that has died or something like that. Brown bears, they've seen, they did a study on Kodiak, and there were bear adoptions there. And there have also been, oddly enough, brown bears don't seem to be very good at recognizing their own cubs. There have been situations where two sows with 3 cubs got together in the middle of a situation like at McNeil where they have a lot of bears, and at one point one of them ended up with 5 cubs and one of them ended up with 1 cub, and they stayed that way for the rest of the season. So that's a whole nother thing where it is possible that bears do adopt other bears because they don't know it's not their cub, right? So in this situation, it's not clear why she would have adopted bear little 503. When I do this program live, I normally ask people to think about what risks 503 took when he approached her. Obviously, she could have killed him. We do now know that female bears kill male, cubs. And then what risk and reward would Holly have? Normally we talk about the fact that the risk was that she might not have enough milk for 719. So one of the things I like to do is look at this next little video to see how did 719, how did that work out for her? And in my mind, she's looking pretty fat and happy. She has a pretty fat mom. I like to play this video also because if you look at 503, you will notice him perk up, pay attention, yawn. Yawning is a sign of stress in the bear, and look pretty uncomfortable, whereas 435 and her cub do not when this bear swims by. So if you watch 503, he's looking over. You're going to see him pay attention all of a sudden. Up, he perked up. Big yawn. Looking uncomfortable, and you will see a bear swimming by in the background, and that bear dives. That bear is bear number 402, his bio mom. So this is a true soap opera moment. We have mom who no longer has her bio cub. We have the adopted family, the blended family, happily sitting on the spit, looking like the perfect family. And 503 is clearly a little uncomfortable when she swims by. All right. So for those of you who have just joined us, I wanted to reintroduce myself. I'm Ranger Barbara. I'm broadcasting live actually from the Riffles platform here in Katmai National Park. This broadcast is brought by Explore.org, who does many wonderful things for us out here. We're grateful to them. And right now I'm going through my evening program, inviting you into our virtual auditorium here to see some programs that a park visitor who is in person would see. So getting caught up here in our soap opera, now we have, this is the relationships we have here. We have 435 Holly is taking care of 503 and 719, and 402 is on her own. And then what happened? This is actually a picture of a spruce grouse. We see a lot of those here. So cub adult becomes subadult. In 2016, Holly emancipated both 719 and 503. 503 got a whole extra year out of it because she didn't emancipate him until she emancipated her spring cub. So a lot of us around here are seeing a lot of subadults, and we've been seeing them throughout the year. When I'm here in the program in the auditorium, I like to ask people what they notice about subadults. Most of the time they're skittish. They pal up together early in the season. They're very skinny and they're running around just trying to graze or get some food. So I like to talk about what a normal subadult looks like, and then we launch into good old 503. What is 503 doing? Is he running around looking scared? No. He got on the lip right away. His mom is a big lip fisher, and he got a year with her. So let's see how he did the first time he was on the lip. And I tell you, I remember this. I remember this when this happened, and I remember just feeling exhausted trying to catch up with him looking at every single fish. I swear, he looks at every single fish as they're jumping by. So that is actually one of my absolute favorite bear cam moments ever, is when 503 catches a fish in his armpit. I personally think that should be the picture that people are trying to get. If someone could walk away from here with a picture of a bear catching a fish in his armpit, that is much better than the fish going in the mouth. Anyway, and I think it's funny watching him use his paw. If you watch him fish the lip now, he still uses his paw like that. So anyway, it's very fun to watch him learning how to fish the lip like his mom. And like I said earlier, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we will try and answer them afterwards. So another thing that our friend 503 did that is a little unusual for a subadult. Oh, I always forget this wonderful transition. I remember when we were watching that, 503 was up on the lip until this giant fish hit him directly in the nose. It was hilarious. And so bear cam viewers, people who are in the auditorium, I put these little cartoon bubbles up and they don't know that they really get it, but bear cam viewers get that we have a lot of fun on the bear cam and make cartoons and things. And this is the one I made right after 503 got hit in the nose with the fish. So anyway, the next thing 503 did that is a little unusual for a subadult was he got himself in the jacuzzi. This is the place that most of the time dominant bears are fishing. So let's see how he did in there. So this, to my knowledge, was one of the first times he got in the jacuzzi. 503 even now has this way of jumping into the jacuzzi. All the other bears very stately walk into the jacuzzi, and that little bear even now likes to pounce into the jacuzzi. He's hilarious. So good job. He catches a fish. He actually positions it in his mouth. Got to shake the water out of the ears, though. That's really important. And here comes the big learning curve moment. I have this vision of him going, oh yeah, the big bears, they take the fish over to the island. They take the fish over to the island. But they do not drop the fish when they are shaking the water out of their ears. So he has to go over and get it. I think that's pretty funny. And then, as many of us know who've been following 503, this bear just has his own style. This is one of my absolute favorite things that 503 does. Here he goes. The 503 dance. And I do tell people, if you're out there watching, we love it. You made a video to Swan Lake of this for Baryshnikov, which I actually sent to my daughter one time because she's a dancer. So absolutely hilarious. I love playing this video in the auditorium, especially if there's children. They just laugh and laugh at this. It's just too funny. 503 has his own style. And we have a lot to learn from 503, so I decided to give it a try myself. Here I am in the jacuzzi. We're allowed to get in the jacuzzi before June 15th. And I didn't break any rules doing this. I was unable to get all 4 paws out of the water. I did get a hand and a foot out of the water. So I just thought I'd demonstrate that that bear has skills. All right, and then what happened? Then what happened is our other player is 719. Mike has told me 719 has been at the falls this morning, which is really fun. I have a hard time identifying her. She looks like a blonde bear to me, but I'm glad he was here. So she's been here. And what 719 did was she seems to have kind of gotten some lessons from her big brother. And what she did the summer she was emancipated is she hung out with 402, 503's bio mom, in a very soap opera fashion. You can see 402 here in the jacuzzi. Here comes 719 walking up. It's very unusual for a subadult to hang out with a family group for a summer. What she got out of that, we normally have a discussion about this. What did she get out of that? She probably got protection. Subadults are the bottom rung of the ladder, even below cubs. Cubs have the protection of their mom. She also got to observe a whole another summer of being with 402 to learn stuff. So it was very, it seems to us that she saw the gains that her brother got out of staying with her mom and teamed up with 402's mom. All right, so as you can see in true soap opera fashion, we now have 435 taking care of 503, 402 taking care of 719, which is not really true. She didn't take care of her. She never nursed her. She did not adopt her. In fact, she did chase her off several times, but she clearly tolerated her for quite a long time. So what this tells us, this whole thing, is that we are so lucky on the bear cams to be able to observe these bears year after year after year. And we see them as individuals now. They aren't just random brown bears out here eating fish. We see Otis, who's a fan favorite. Chunk has been back. And these bears have individual stories now that we know. We know their individual personalities. They have fan clubs. So it's hard not to think of them sometimes as little characters, which is in some ways a little dangerous. So I remember one day Otis and Chunk were just sitting out in the jacuzzi kind of together. I just had this vision of these 2 fishermen out there, and I remember I did like 6 of these little cartoons of them talking to each other. It was just really fun that day. So we normally have a little discussion now about names versus numbers, a very controversial topic. I always ask the audience, do they like names or numbers? Overwhelmingly, 90% of people want names. Then we have a discussion about why is that, and it's mostly because it's easy to remember. Much easier to remember a name. I can relate to that. I have a brain that does not retain numbers. You can tell me a number, I will write it down incorrectly a second later. And so it is a lot easier for me. We also talk about where a lot of these names came from. The names come from the fact that we need to have some way to kind of remember their identifying features. For instance, Walker is named Walker not because of Walker, Texas Ranger, which I always thought, but actually because he had big black circles around his eyes and it was like The Walking Dead. Divot is named Divot because she dug divots in the ground and they would have to fill them in for the airplanes to land. So there's all kinds of stories about that. But we also have a discussion about what is the issue with names. Names can turn into caricatures, and we want to remember that these are wild bears. They are not Disney characters or cartoon characters, and they are wild and trying to pigeonhole them. The other thing, it was interesting talking to Ranger Roy, who was here earlier in the season when we were training. He says names are inevitable, and in some ways it's better for us to kind of have a little control over the names so that all of the, if you're out on the falls platform, you will hear people naming all of the bears that are sitting in the jacuzzi Brutus, every one of them, Brutus and Killer are the males, Fluffy and Sweetheart are the females. So in some ways, do we want that, or do we want to name them something that has to do with some other characteristic of them? And this is just a picture I took. I saw this bear quite a bit early on in June. We didn't know who he was. He has a large wound on his leg, and all I could come up with him, every time I saw him, I called him in my head Mr. Big or Mr. Brown. So I'm not exactly the best namer either. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at this video. Again, if you have questions, please submit them so that we can answer them. Either if we can't answer them today, maybe we can answer them in the chat later. But we always want to give you an opportunity to ask us questions when we're available. So we're going to watch this video a couple times. The first time we're going to talk about it in a kind of scientific way, and then we're going to talk about it in a sort of relationship way. And some of you may remember this. So what we're going to talk about is we have a subadult bear up on the lip, and we have a female and her, I think these were third year cubs, and they're kind of putting her in her place in the dominance hierarchy. Like I said earlier, subadults are the bottom rung, even below the cubs, and these guys are pushing her up against the lip. And now we have another sort of part of the dominance hierarchy coming in. They're demonstrating what happens when another larger bear or a more dominant bear shows up. They're going to take notice and back off. This bear coming up on the falls, all he has to do is his mere presence is enough to drive these mom and her cubs, these giant cubs, I always say they look like a street gang, all the way across the falls over to the fish ladder. Notice that the subadult is not too concerned about his presence. So let's talk about that video. Here, let me go back. Oops. Oh, let's see if I can get this to play. I might have to have Ranger Andrew help me. Maybe it's just delayed. No. Thank you. All right, so here we have Princess on the lip. This is Princess, I believe, and she's being threatened. Clearly, she's scared up there. They're bossing her around and bullying her. They're being bullies, and she's obviously cowed by them and scared. But they are now backing away. Clearly, someone big and ferocious is coming up the falls. And when we see who it is, why, that is Princess's brother. Princess's brother Cubadult has come to save her. And here he comes up to the falls, and he has saved the day. So as you can see, when we know who the players in the story are, it really does change how we look at it. And we also have to be a little careful about putting our own human characteristics on them. Does a bear bully? I mean, would a bear bully another bear, or are they just being dominant? Is a bear saving another bear, or are they just sauntering up there? And now we're going to move to this video, which we saw in the beginning. Some of you already knew who all the players are because you're just smarty pants bear cam people. But many of you who haven't been on the cams won't recognize these bears, and these bears are actually the bears that are in our story. 503 is not in this. But I think it helps to have seen a video and not know who the bears are, and then see the video narrated with the bears, and you will see how knowing these bears' stories changes how we interpret their behavior. So the bear that's coming out of the water is actually 435 Holly. She is running up against her bio cub 719. So she pushes, 402 comes in here and gets between 435 and 719, which is a little confusing because it's all confusing. This whole video is very confusing. We've looked at it a number of times, and there are different ways to think about what's happening. So 435 Holly comes over here one more time, and she again charges 719. 402 Den definitely comes over and interacts with Holly. She's got her two cubs with her. 719 is right there in the foreground. 435 backs off. And then 402, I think, regroups with her cubs. And then 402 pushes away 719. So I think the whole kind of point that I have about this is that for us to try and decide, sometimes 402 has been labeled a bad mom. I've heard this before. 435 Holly has been labeled a super mom. I actually had a discussion with a person who works here about whether 402 was a bad mom. There was an incident where she had 4 cubs this year. at one point, one of them got lost and she only had 3. And so we were talking about, is 402 a bad mom? And he said to me, well, 402 never plays with her cubs. I see 435 playing with her cubs. And I just think if we try and put our human relationships and morals and things like that, we really detract from the fact that these bears are wild bears. They're living in a wild bear world with their own wild bear behaviors. And sometimes we just don't know what they're doing or why they're doing. They're just being wild bears. And when people come here to Katmai, we always try and make sure that they remember that these are wild bears. We do have these walkways, which are off a lot like modern zoos have walkways, and you look down at animals. These are not captive animals. They're wild bears. They need space. They need to be able to do what they do, and in some ways they need to be able to create their own stories. All right, so at the end of our story, we have 4 separate bears out on their own. We have, I love this picture. I took it last year. 410 is our oldest bear. She's 30 years old, came along. A lot of people really do believe 503 is going to be the bear who's going to be dominant. This was 435 Holly and her family. She now has 2 spring cubs. The Where Are They Now part of the show. Here is 719, who I guess is on the cams this morning. So this was her just a few weeks ago. Here's 402. She now has 4 spring cubs, and they are adorable. She has not come back since August, so hopefully she'll come back with all 4, but that would, to me, be a major miracle. It's hard to keep 4 cubs, and here she is at the falls with her 4 cubs just a few weeks ago. This is what 503 looked like when he showed up in June this year. We're very grateful to a Bear Cram viewer who gave me these photos from the first day. And he was demonstrating that he is clearly now moved into the category of adult male. We have this nice discrete picture. There are several pictures that follow it that we just don't show those kind of pictures in this show. Adults become adults when they are sexually mature, and we have proof of that. This is a most recent pictures we have of 503. Just a few days ago, I got that picture of 503 with all 4 paws out of the water. How about that? He is still doing his thing. So normally at this time, we invite people to tune in to the 503 show on the Bear Cam. You guys are already on the cam, so I don't have to pitch the cam to you, which is normally. I also talk about how much fun we have on the cam and about the Fat Bear contest. I talk to people about downloading the Bear ID book, which if you're new to this, you can download the Bear ID book. It has lots of information and links for the bears and information about the bears, pages about what bear behavior is about. And 503 now has his own page as an adult male. You'll also find in all of these their stories, and you can see 503's story is narrated on his page. So we are so happy that you were able to come and see this program here. And now I'm going to say my one conclusion, even though we're not in the auditorium. I like to say it's really great that 100 years ago they founded this park. And later we have people like Mike and Roy who had the forethought to put the technology in to share this incredible place with people who can't get here. It's very remote, hard to get here. And we're grateful that people who do come here, as soon as they get back to Wi-Fi, they can follow the stories of the bears they've seen while they're in the park. All right, so now we're going to do the questions. Hopefully you've asked me a whole bunch of questions that I can actually answer. I'm going to let Andrew fix that for me. So one question is there likely that there are other adoptions at Brooks River that we aren't aware of? Actually, that's a good question, because one of the ways when people don't have the cams is that they know that there is a bear adoption, is maybe a bear came out of the den with 2 cubs and then is later seen with 3. So I thought it was funny. One time we were talking about the good mom, bad mom thing with Ranger Roy, and he said, well, Bear 402 has 4 cubs, and 435 cubs shows up with 2, but we don't know how many she actually gave birth to. We know that she shows up with 2 cubs, so it's not possible to really know how many cubs they started with. So I think it is possible. It's hard for us to identify cubs, and that's one of the things in the research papers that I read about adoptions. They are often unable to tell. You can't tell a cub from a cub unless you have a little gray one or something. Yeah, now someone said, might Holly have taken in a male cub? She only had a female. It is also true that they think that one of the reasons that people might adopt bears is that that bear might provide protection for the other cub, that having safety in numbers, more bears, more cubs. Is there a smell that allows 719 to recognize 402 and 503 are related? Why would she pick 402 to hang out with? Well, you know, because now we have a soap opera. It was the perfect choice. You know, I think it's interesting, the smell part. It maybe, but I think when they talked about the research that they did where they had the bear families that couldn't, one bear family ended up with 5 cubs and the other mom ended up with 1. And when they talked about that, they talked about how the mom that had 1 did try and connect up with her other cubs and didn't. So I don't know that there is that ability. And that sort of thing also only happens in areas where there's a big concentration of bears. The bear adoption thing is interesting also because when the bears are out in solitary, they don't have a whole lot of bears to mix with. Have you seen anything interesting on the Valley of 10,000 Smokes Road recently? That's kind of a good question because one of the things that's very interesting is we've been seeing a lynx in camp. We have a lynx that's been coming down the road, actually walked between the housing out here. People have seen moose out there. They have seen wolves. Someone saw wolverine. I, however, have seen spruce grouse. That's it. Last year I hit the jackpot. You could see all those photos I took. The what happened next photos were almost all on one evening out on the Valley Road. We've tried to recreate that and it has just not yet happened. I've only really seen spruce grouse. Is it possible that adoption fostering is more common than we think? Absolutely. One of the things that I think is important to remember is how difficult it is to do brown bear research. Brown bears, people ask us when we're here, where do the bears go? And I always have to say, we don't know. We don't know where they go. We don't track them. They have no any sort of chips in them or anything. And if you are out here, you will see how dense this forest is. Once you get into this forest, it is almost impossible to track a bear. So to try and keep track of which bears have which cubs is, I think, nearly impossible. And that's why I like to talk in this program about what a miracle it is that we have these cams. You guys actually see more than we do out here. It is actually in July, I am almost never at the falls. If I'm at the falls, I am normally working with people. I'm taking names and from our waiting list, and it is our volunteers are out at the falls talking to people about the bears. But when I'm here working, I am generally working with people. So you guys out on the cams are the ones who are seeing all of these amazing things and capturing the videos. That's the other important thing, is we can capture videos and we can make conclusions about things from seeing it over and over. Most bear biologists are maybe up in a helicopter or they're out in the field or out on the tundra, and they're not able to see the numbers of bears. Here we can see bears engaging at the lower platform at the same time as we're looking at the bears that are at the falls. I'm not sure whether we have, what other questions we have. Yep, okay, so anyway, I'm happy you joined me today. It's been really fun. I'm really glad that I really am passionate about thinking that you guys are with us here. So lucky for me, we're wrapping it up because I'm getting the low battery message. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'm so glad that you tore yourself away from watching the bears at the falls. I'm going to go over and do that right now. Thank you. Yay. Turn me off.
I can't wait to go home and watch it.
Oh.